we are making this bigger proposal is about AI tools for decentralized groups. These are the chapters we have. I thought I will go quickly through all of that, and we will basically slow down again on the current chapter we are working on right now, and then Sebastian can translate it. So in the way which chapterized the writing a proposal were main ones: problem ideation, then solution ideation. So these are the main concepts to kind of get you down of what you want to provide. In the meantime, in the community, we had this made up chapter called Making Sense of Solution Ideation, because the idea was too big to kind of go in detail on our areas. And we had to do a strategical thinking in how do we scope down that big idea of like, hey, let's decentralize a platform. Then we have this chapter of titling, proposal type and taxonomy, stakeholder network, who are all related to your proposal. And then after all of these sessions, we came together again and realized, okay, we have like a bigger vision of we want to provide a platform for AI tools and people to kind of integrate with that platform. But our scope is community collaboration first. And there we did again this chapter 1, problem ideation and solution ideation, and came with the problem statement of open source DAO platforms that use AI are not being integrated with each other. And solution would be to create community standards on how to introduce interoperable AI features. So when we get down to the idea of like this, okay, we create community standards on how to introduce interoperable AI features, we still have in the background knowledge what we are scoping down of the AI features itself is using videos of meeting videos we basically have right now, using AI to transcribe it, store that information, so that later on we could use ChatGPT-like features to say, and like get historical information. Did we make decision in past 3 months about something? Or can you summarize the activities done in past 3 months? Like things which usually take a lot of time to go back in documentation to check. And like information dissemination is basically the goal of that of these AI platforms. But right now we are scoping down like how do we walk through this? Like when we create these events, like what needs to be done in human level to even be able to get consensus on the standards? How do we create these modules? What is open source? How do we reward each other? And like these discussions. So that is the main like discussions when it's around. And last session, we were in Europe Town Hall and we were defining success for them. Actually, before that, basically in previous sessions, we were discussing defining success. And now we are working on key performance measurements. And if we move on to the, actually, this is also a schedule. You can see all the sticky notes in this calendar show where the events have happened and which are coming next. So in chapter 6, we were defining successes. So outputs and outcomes we are expecting to do. And many of these are like, let's create events and let's create standards, like make documentation, some videos. And then we have with this, all this AI platforming, we have risks, like there's a lot of parallelism of tools, projects evolve differently, like how do we even keep track of all of these different platforms? And all of that, we had to think of some risk mitigations. And based on that information, and of course, we have a challenge setting because we are in this Cardano space, Project Catalyst, and we chose that the Atala Prism ecosystem would be the best challenge for us. And using these outcomes and risk mitigations, in the last session, we came together and simply ideated on all the measurements we should be recording on these. For example, on standard documentation, we have questions like how often the documentation version is changed, how many paragraphs is there in standard, how many times standard is used, like all of these kinds of questions. And today's call would be to go to everybody who's able to join in the motherboard. We vote on this and like what are most relevant KPIs, and then we will be starting from the top voted ones, discussing the reasoning and the strategy. How do we use that measurement and how relevant it actually is to be measured? So now we have a lot of information at once, and we finally reached to the current situation, where the final thing is to share how are these KPIs organized now, because it was connected in different ways. And then we will have voting, and then our discussion will start. So when we are working on this chapter 7 area, so if everybody wants to join, we're no longer moving around the board anymore. And the main thing I noticed from the last session was that we're working on like everything starts from standard documentation, like how many times it's used, how many collaborators sign in, how many element view has, what is the sentiment of people when they look at the standard. And there are like examples of standards we have, like how to manage data, how to integrate. So a lot of like guiding material basically is the standard. And two main things it changes into is a rule book, how reputation is shared between contributors and developers, and the proof of concept, how to integrate one open source DAO platform with another. And why are these changing is like, basically we're going two different routes. One is we're trying to show and create the proof of concept from this proposal and all these measurements around that. And another one is actually creating the collaborative environment where when you're giving feedback or you're integrating with the standard or creating the documentation or translating, how will you be fairly rewarded for this activity? So it will become like an open source collaboration, like wherever you are and you're contributing, you should be rewarded for that. And that should be also part of the standard. When we take the trajectory of rulebook of how reputation is shared, like how do we, then it becomes like rewards. And from rewards, we have some tracking, like how much were distributed between different wallets. And another one, the collaboration, then expectation, like tasks and activities, like feedback is activity, actually developing on something on the platform is an activity. And we ideated a few KPIs, like how many open tasks there are, how many open activities there are, and etc. And these tasks and activities can turn into workshops and events where people come together and hack together some kind of activities or discuss through like what should be the rules be about it and what's the right way to conduct the like privacy concerns. Like there is so many events and workshops we've had, and that was like the main area of what we are doing. And then it also, these events and workshops divide also in two and actually three. And one of these is basically because we are doing it under Atala Prison challenge settings. The challenge setting itself brings some expectation that how many partners finished the complete the Atala Prison Pioneer program. And then also there was a mention of IoT workshops. So we basically, the proposal will be a slight like partnership with the IoT team in order to cross-community people, because they have the educational tools to describe what is governance framework. And this is very topical for our standards too. And of course, events also create videos, and we thought, why not just see how much views videos get as a measurement. All of these events and workshops expect that participants will be part of that. And there are many ways to measure the participants, like how many participants there are, what is the sentiment score, what did they learn, how many participants used any of these standards or tools. But what makes participants also, as participants come, they also create their own brands or platforms. They come as a product team or a work group. And for now, we have a few people throughout this journey. We have met DAO, Swarm, Kimba Labs, Insight IQ, and Clarity DAO, who be all interested building on this standard and creating connections and collaboration and events and educating each other to build a good place. And one thing we thought was also we should think about licenses, what these products and teams are using, because we are in this weird world where Web3 regulation is not really catching up to us, and we don't even know how to measure that. So we thought few ideas like how could we at least know how many different types of licenses people are using and stuff like that, and would be a bit of insight. And all of these people then come together and starting integrating and building on this proof of concept. And together, we basically create the standard and the proof of concept, which will be then servicing microservices and having different use cases for communities. And now comes the interaction part, where I'm setting up now an area where I selected all these sticky notes, and I'm giving one vote. So every sticky note can be voted once. I will give 12 votes to everybody and 6 minutes. And what we are doing is now going over all of these questions on your own. You will look like, and what we're looking for is the measurement, what are most important to track in your opinion. And if you like, how many collaborators signed the standard document? So if you see an underscore, then it means the underscore for these yellow sticky notes. How many times standard documentation is used? How many collaborators signed the standard documentation? You find it's a very important documentation, like to share to community and to something to measure, you click on it. And then +1 will appear. If you want to remove, you can click the minus mark. And this way you go through all the white sticky notes and start voting. After we all do this, we will end up with a heat map and some kind of like priority lists, what we collectively think as most important questions. And let's see, based on this small amount of votes, where did our results lie?
He wants to know what license means. What's the context of licensing in that bubble?
Yeah.
Okay. So the idea was that because all of these yellow sticky notes are outcomes and outputs or risk mitigations, and most likely there was a risk mitigation of licensing the tools, because we need to protect our intellectual property, so that it sounds simply that our standard is copied by a big corporation and we just lose out revenue. But all of these collaborative, decentralized organization licenses don't really exist. So what people are using to protect ourselves from the outside world, so to say. And we thought that, okay, when we have this license, let's collect how many of different types of partners are using them. Like, do they even use them? Do they even care? Like, is Creative Commons, or I'm just building something because this is my passion. I want to build. I have no clue about regulations and licensing. And that is an insight for us. If we like have 10 partners and nobody uses licenses, like, well, we have to think something of it. Or alternatively, we're capturing feedback from those projects about their limitations of the licenses they choose. So they have licenses, but they have issues with them all the time. And if they're overlapping in different partners, then it's again something we could look into and find help from. All right. So now, as we learned about different KPIs, where they are coming from, we will also need to start reasoning on them when we pick them for the proposal. And for today, I will take one example where we overlap the most. So we had 3 votes on this one. And so I'm going to bring our attention to this table. So I copy-paste the measurement name, how many integrations are done between platforms, basically, different partners. We also use like, what is the category of that measurement? Because if we're starting to have many of these, people will perhaps only interested in like, is it technical, or is it revenue related, or is it participation related? And right now we don't really have to think of this, what kind of category it is. These categories come when you start listing more of these measurements, and then how do you differentiate them? But it is important to know, why is this measurement important? Like, what does it give us to measure how many integrations are done between partnerships? Totally agree. And from my side, I see from the outside, when you see the amount of integrations done on this standard, 1 or 2 or 100, if these numbers get big, they're like, what is happening? Why people are integrating this standard? Why are these people collaborating? Should I be part of that? So I feel like that's a good marketing measurement to be showing. Like, hey, we have 20 people joining and integrated with each other through 100 different products. And that there we can leverage that interoperability that Sebastian mentioned. Hey, these teams and communities are integrated with systems, and they're leveraging each other's skills and tools to achieve what they're to achieve, basically. And in measurements, we also have, it's a good to try to think if you can say what is the current situation and the expected situation you're driving with your proposal. And as for current situation, if you look at the landscape of generally the standards we are building and decentralized systems, I actually see a very little integrations, because we have ADA doing a summon, or we have like ITS scale kinda is doing, but still it's not integrated with anything. So we have good tools in silos, because we're not able to transfer the modules between them. And on top of that, now we have ChatGPT, but we can just turn in ChatGPT into ITS scale. Like, hey, I want to learn, is there any technical proposals regarding Python in Fund or Catalyst? We can't do that because there is no integration between that. And there was no standard to make it very easy to integrate. So I will say in current situation, we lack the integrations between tools and we have right now. Does anybody else want to include some current situation, or what are our expected situation or measurements? I can share for the expected one that we would like to, because in the proposal we mentioned Talents, Singularity Net Marketplace, and Insight IQ as like the main place to create a proof of concept. So between these three, there will be already 3 integrations, and that would be a good starting place. But if you also take in like Gimbal Labs, they're doing this escrow and bounty system, perhaps we could get another one. So pushing it a little, so I would give 4 integrations between Then another thing, multiple integration between different platforms, because you can have because currently platform can do many things like launching events, doing task management, having forums, having discussion panels, and integrating each of these elements would be one extra integration. So I will just mention that here, the multiple between. Then we may want to think of how will we measure it. So in that case, we're thinking like, do you use numbers, or like where do you even like store it? Is it something that there has to be like a signature between the different contracts, or yeah? So basically now is our question, how do we want to showcase that, where people will look at these measures? And in this example, how many integration are done between different partners, to me, I see it as like a development side where they have like a GitHub repo or an API connection. So to me, I would right now assume it's going to be GitHub commits basically. And finally, we also want to think of like, how do we roadmap our measurements? Maybe we'll start reporting it, because some measurements we may not be able to start. For example, to get into integration, we have to first figure out the standards and the teams and the rewards, and how do we share all of these resources we have and the skills we have. And so we can bring like conditions, and then how long you share these measurements. Like there are durations, or like when do we like stop after we have like 5 integrations? Do we still want to show it, or we take a stop on that? So, and yeah, different measurements will have the different roadmaps. And in current scenario, I would say that the condition is after work, or after basically tasks are established and they are picked up by collaborators or partners. And I don't actually see a reason to stop it. So once there is one integration, it stops basically with the proposal. It stops with closing report. This is all it takes to do one measurement. And when you do this, now what we don't go this on today, but in order to finish your proposal today, the KPIs, you will take another measurement. And now as you do it, you will actually able to reuse your own previous elements, because some measurements will have the same property as that one. Oh, actually, yeah, your Git commits or like increases the use cases, and for the other use, like there is many repetitive cases, and the more you do it, the more you will kind of see the connections and the relevance, and it gets easier. And even cooler of that is where technically, if you do it for different proposals, you're actually able to cross-reference this information and start copy-pasting, because there is a lot of pattern when doing these proposals that can be used.
Tio, I wanted to really thank you for this. I've been meaning to join one of these workshops for a long time, and yeah, quite excited for this. Lately, I've been doing a lot about productivity management and life work balance management. I actually try gamification of my life through an app online. And yeah, it's been quite useful. I managed to be more productive, be more clear with ideas. So I have no doubt that this will be quite useful for this as well. So thank you very much.
My question from you is only to ask the like, is there anything like special you learned, or how could I improve this system or engagement? Anything or feedback like that?
Well, one of the things I enjoy the most is actually to start thinking about how I'm gonna measure stuff, because it's very easy to say like, oh, okay, I want to do this and that, and yeah, I want to be successful in this and that. But I don't think most people, in my case, for example, we don't spend so much time thinking about how we're gonna measure, and especially when we're gonna measure, because we just want to get one number maybe in 1 year, but you have a whole year in the middle that you could see progress and measure progress. So yeah, that's what I took from this workshop.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kawe.
Thank
Well,
you, guys. It was great. Translation service was awesome. And thank you so much, Juanita, for setting